going on, sports fans? Welcome to I believe it's the 10th edition of the Student Section Summer League podcast. Yes. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have several things that we're going to be getting into today. I apologize for not having an episode last week. I'm sure Cooper and Dylan, my co-hosts here, we all feel sorry about that too. There were just circumstances that just led to us not being able to produce a podcast. However, that being said, everything that we didn't cover last week is now rolling over into this show, and don't you worry, we're going to get into it and cover it all. So first up, we're going to be talking about the SEC's season plan. They just announced a couple days ago that the SEC is going to have a football plan in place for this football season coming up in the fall. And then second, we're going to get into what's been going on with the MLB. They've started up their season. There have been some positives. They've gone through a bunch of games already, but at the same time, they've had games get canceled. And we're going to be talking about just kind of the never-ending story, it seems, with what's going on in the MLB. And then finally, we will cap it off with the NBA, who's had a much more positive restart. Some very flashy games, a lot of flashy play, high-scoring games. And we're going to talk about why that might be and some of the cool games coming up this week. And this is the Student Section Summer League podcast. So Dylan, Coop, I don't know about you guys, but as soon as I heard that the SEC had come out with a football plan, it got my blood, it got my heart racing. I mean, it was like to hear that we have a plan in place finally. I mean, it was so up in the air. Now, again, a lot of stuff could happen before then. I fully am aware that there will be players getting infected if they play. That's a different discussion that we might even have in a different episode. Is this plan even viable? But let's talk about this plan. So first off, here are some of the details of it. Southeastern Conference, they announced on Friday, I believe it was, the season is going to be delayed a month. So the start date is going to be September 26th instead of that first day or that last day in August. And it's only going to be a conference schedule. So 10 games. As you know, the SEC already has 8 games in the conference that they play with 4 non-conference. The non-conference have been scrapped, and they're going to have to figure out a way to somehow get conference opponents to fill those last 2 spots. So the SEC championship, that's going to get moved back to December 16th, 2 weeks after its original date. There's going to be an open date in between the last week of the season and the SEC championship game that's going to be used for any games that get canceled due to COVID-19 that they have to push into those spots to make sure that they fit their 10-game quota. There has been a tentative plan. This is not certain, and I think that there are some problems with it that we're about to get into, but there is a plan to have teams add their 2021 and 2022 cross-divisional opponents to their schedule. So, for example, a team like Florida would add Alabama and Texas A&M. Georgia would add Arkansas and Mississippi State. Now, this does create some imbalance. A team like Alabama, they'd have to play 4 to 5 top 10 opponents, which is insane. I mean, that you want to talk about Alabama having I love it too. I mean, it makes for an amazing season.
Bring it on.
But it is ridiculously tough. I mean, LSU had one of the best rosters, as you know, because you would have watched our CFB all-time team episodes. LSU had one of the best rosters and one of the best players ever.
He's boasting.
I am boasting. I predicted that, but that is besides the point. We would have to play. Bama would be playing Florida, LSU, Georgia, Auburn, and Texas A&M in the same season, week after week after week. I mean, that is a ridiculous load to have to take just to get into the playoff, and then you play more top 10 teams in the playoff. Mm-hmm. So, but a team like Georgia would get Arkansas and Mississippi State. So it's like we would be getting Florida and they would get Arkansas, right? So it creates some imbalance. But is there a way to create any balance? Everything that you guys have heard from this plan, what do you guys think about it? Is this the best way to? Is this the best route to go? Is this going to be the most effective way to get SEC football going come September?
I think it's kind of tough because I think there's 2 sides of it. There's the fan side of me, where as an Alabama fan, I would love to see Alabama play Florida, LSU, Georgia, Auburn, A&M, Mississippi State. I'd love to see them play all of those teams in one season because personally, if Bama could run through that gauntlet, hands down, maybe the greatest team to ever touch a football field, honestly. But then the other side of me agrees with you, Dom. I think there is some imbalance there. I think if this plan goes forth, it will be a lot harder for a team like Alabama to go and compete for a national championship when a team like Georgia, their only real hard game could be argued would be that Alabama game in the beginning of the season. So it's very hard to pick in my opinion.
I think there's always going to be imbalance. With the way the SEC schedule is set up right now, you are always going to have imbalance. Some teams are just going to have an easier schedule than others, like Georgia possibly this year compared to an Alabama or a Florida. The only way to get rid of that imbalance is probably to restructure the whole SEC schedule, which is another conversation for another show. Tune back in when we're on 90.7, the capstone for that debate.
Yes.
But right now there's no way to get that balance. So, just the thought that we have a plan is music to our ears. And I say, let's get cracking on this schedule.
I think the connection froze up just for a little second, but we fully got the gist of exactly what you were saying just by that little slide to the side. And I heard, let's get cracking on the schedule.
Let's get cracking.
Yeah, I'm with you. I definitely think that it has its flaws, obviously. But I think for whatever league at any point during this pandemic, whatever they're trying to do to put a schedule together, you cannot get nitpicky, or you will never, ever get this done right. I mean, you'll never get it going. And I know that player safety needs to be of the first concern. And I think that's why they kind of moved it back a month. Not only does it give players time to, go through a few more weeks of camp and continue to do strength training and continue to do speed and endurance and play with the pads, but it also gives time for the numbers of this pandemic to kind of get under control. Now, whether or not they're going to, that of course remains to be seen. But a 2-month cushion is great. That kind of ups our hope a little bit. It remains to be seen whether or not it's going to be successful. I think they're going to start, but I definitely think that week in between the SEC championship game and the last week of the season is going to get used for several teams because the chances of a college football team on a college campus where they cannot create, 100 different bubbles with all these different universities where nobody's going to get exposed. They can't do that like the NBA. There's too many players, too big of a facility, too big of a game. Somebody's going to get COVID, and it's going to spread, and they're going to have to postpone games. I think that's just a reality. I think every single football league in this country knows that that's a reality. And, whether or not the players, much like the league that we're about to get into, whether or not those players in the SEC want to band together and they want to implement some structure, some safety structures, some health requests, I think that that's totally reasonable. But I definitely think that this is a step in the right direction for sure, and it means that the consequences of not playing football to the SEC are bigger the consequences of not playing football are much larger than going ahead and playing it. And now on the other side of the country, you had something to say.
One more thing on the SEC.
Yes.
I will say I am a little sad that we will not be having a non-conference game this year. I kind of liked what the ACC was thinking of doing, which was 9 conference games and 1 out-of-conference games. But it's sad that we won't have a non-conference game because for the first time since 1957, Florida and Florida State will not meet on a football field. And for the first time since forever, Georgia and Clemson, South Carolina, grades between the ACC and SEC will have to take a pause for 1 year.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, there are going to be some incredible non-conference matchups that we lost. The Louisville, Kentucky game, Clemson, South Carolina, Florida, Florida State, even some marquee, matchups that were just going to be single-year things like LSU and Texas. I mean, that's lost now too. And it's just like I'm sure we'll get them back in the future, but those were games that we were really looking forward to. And we talked about it a few weeks ago. Those are the streaks that are broken. Those are definitely really unfortunate. Even Georgia Tech. I mean, a game that, you know who's going to win, but it's just that streak has been going for so long, that rivalry games. It's very important to that state. On the other side of the country, the Pac-12, players in the Pac-12 at least, have come out and threatened to boycott fall practices and games if a list of demands that they have created are not met. And there are a lot of demands, and we'll kind of get into that. These demands, they range from pay to health benefits to social justice, specifically, secured eligibility and roster spots. If somebody decides that they want to opt out during the pandemic, they believe that they should have their roster spot as well as their scholarship not only respected but secured for whatever span of time that they're out. They believe that the excessive pay of coaches, in their words, needs to be trimmed down, as well as spending on facilities. They want that money to go towards meeting these demands. They believe that most of their coaches are overpaid, apparently, and that most of the universities spend way too much on facilities when they should be spending on the health and safety of their athletes and paying them, I guess. And finally, one of the biggest demands that I've read that they're coming out with is they want 50% of Pac-12 revenue for this year to be evenly distributed among Pac-12 athletes. And 50%, I mean, the Pac-12's revenue last year, I believe, was either $350 million or $530. I remember it being those two numbers. It's in the millions. It's in the hundred of millions, and they want that 50% of that to be distributed to all Pac-12 athletes, regardless of how much their program brings in, regardless of what the TV deal is, whatever it is. They want half of that. Guys, these are some massive, massive demands to make a season work. If they're going to boycott, I don't know how many players are involved with this. One confirmed was Penei Sewell from Oregon. He tweeted his support for this movement, and he's a huge player to have as a front man. But I mean, guys, where is this even possible to meet when the season is 2 months away, 1 month away, whatever it is for the Pac-12, and they want all of these demands, or they're not going to play? This blew my mind. I don't know about you guys, but I want to hear it.
I think this was a measure to see how much they could get. I think they threw out a lot of, I think, somewhat manageable, and I think a couple of these are doable, and I think a couple of these probably need to be done, and this needs to set a precedent for years to come. But I also think they threw out some radical ideas just to maybe test the waters and see if they threaten this conference, how the conference will respond and how the NCAA will respond as well. And I have to assume, because it's a genuine threat, in my opinion, and I have to assume it's a good amount of athletes who are backing this, because some reports I've been reading is that the Pac-12 is genuinely concerned about not being able to play if this boycott happens.
I look at it as two things. Either one, this is a great negotiation tactic that the players are using, or two, they're serious and it's crazy. If it's a negotiation tactic where they're asking for too much to then have the Pac-12 say, okay, we can't meet that, but let's find a middle ground, and the middle ground is actually what the players want, they're genius. That's what you get for Stanford athletes on your side right now. But if they actually want the 50% of Pac-12 revenues, they're crazy. I mean, the bill was just passed that players could start being compensated for their likeness. But 50% of all revenues, I get distributed evenly. That's just too much money to go to what's supposed to be college student athletes, amateurs who aren't getting paid. So the way I look at this is either a great negotiating tactic or just absolutely crazy.
But do you think it's crazy if they bring down the quote-unquote price tag?
No, if they bring down the price tag, then I can see it kind of being, manageable. Player safety is important, and players should have the chance to opt out of the season. But to me, the price tag is what's too much. That 50% revenue is way too much.
So what do you guys think would be maybe a doable percentage?
I don't know if percentage is needed here. I don't think they need to be compensated. They have a scholarship, they have a meal plan, they have a dorm. I think, and this is my personal opinion, I wasn't on the side of players being compensated in the first place. I think maybe there could be a bank account that gets money put in, but they can only access it outside of college. But I just don't think student athletes should be compensated.
I'm there's a bunch of demands in this that I don't think are that aren't reasonable. I think that absolutely they should be based on the times. They should be guaranteed eligibility. They should probably all get a 6-year medical red shirt if they wish to opt out. I also believe that if there are social justice demands that they want implemented, then that's something that definitely in this time is great for the Pac-12 to observe and maybe follow. I also think that they should all have health coverage for COVID-19. I think that's something that if the university wants them to play and they're going to be getting money off of it, then absolutely. The 50% I think is absolutely not reasonable. I don't even, and I agree with Coop in that a percentage is probably not the right way to go about this. I think that you're not going to be able to find any common ground with the Pac-12 in a 2-month span to get their revenue. I think that those are contractual talks that are going to have to come over the course of a year. It's not something that you can just stiff arm into 2 months and demand that you're going to get that. I just don't think that it's implemented the right way. That's probably what I would say. But I think that there are a lot of demands here that absolutely can be met, and the Pac-12 should observe if they want these athletes to play. However, there has to be a compromise, and 50% of Pac-12 revenue is, to me, absolutely absurd. I mean, and there's so many – you can't just – I mean, distributing that amongst all the athletes, you think the rowing athletes who – I mean, rowing isn't even televised unless it's the championship. It's how do you distribute that and why? And, I don't personally, it's my opinion that specific demand is absurd. But all the other ones, I'm pretty on board with.
No, I agree. I think, yes, everything before the distribution of the revenue, absolutely doable. I think they should be done, and I think things should be done like this probably across the NCAA, and I think this should be a league-wide thing. And I think we can revisit the discussion later of maybe giving away 1 to 5% of the revenue. I think down the line we can have an actual civil discussion, not just throwing out demands. And I think something could be found at that point, though, in the future.
Yep, absolutely agree. And it just now is not the time. You can't go into a contractual talk like that takes a long time to mediate between two sides, especially when traditionally they wouldn't be getting any cut of it at all. So that is a different discussion for a different day. But I hope the Pac-12 can work it out. As much as we like to bag on the Pac-12, they still are a Power 5 conference. They are a significant chunk of college football viewership, especially in the West. So I definitely hope that for the sake of college football, they can make it work and start the season. We're going to jump into some Major League Baseball. So let's talk about this. The last couple of weeks, Major League Baseball, it's been going on. The MLB, we've got some standing leaders here. So in the AL East, no surprise, the Yankees, they're 6-1. In the AL Central, the Twins, 6-2. And in the AL West, the A's, they are 4-4. And then in the NL, the National League East, the Braves are 6-3. The National League Central, the Cubs are 6-2. And in NL West, The Rockies, they are, I think it's 6-3. Now, some interesting things that have been happening over the last couple of weeks. Some good, some bad, some surprises. It's kind of a mixed bag. That's how it's been for the MLB. Let's talk about some quick observations that we've seen just in the last couple of weeks. I will go first. How are the Orioles sitting in second behind the Yankees right now?
It's the Rays' fault.
How is that possible?
That's
you said it's the Rays?
All right, hold on.
It's the Rays' fault.
Emailed. Yeah. I got an email from Tampa earlier this morning. It's from the Florida Aquarium, and it said their local stingray is not happy. The water is not warm, and he is very unhappy, and that is going to change very soon.
All right.
The Rays will be back.
It's
just a 4-game, 5-game slid. It's okay. We're okay.
It happens to the best of us. It's really okay. It's really okay.
Yeah. We only have 50 games left, and we're already down. But we'll be back. Baltimore is just getting lucky. They're getting some lucky breaks. They had to play a New York team that wasn't ready to play them. New York was supposed to play Philadelphia a couple of games ago, and they kind of skipped on to Baltimore to get a couple of games there because of COVID. So Baltimore will be back to the bottom of the East soon enough. That is a Rays guarantee.
That means absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
I take no guarantees from teams from Tampa Bay.
No. But I will say that in my opinion, the AL West is a mess right now. There are 0 teams above 500 in the AL West.
Yeah, it's the Astros and the A's, right? They're
the
tied.
Astros and the A's are tied at 500 at 4-4, and it's not getting any better either. And so the AL West needs to step it up, or else who knows? This season just could be a monstrosity altogether.
Yeah, well, it's already kind of turning into that. I mean, if we're being completely honest, the Phillies, the Cardinals, and the Marlins, especially the Marlins, but I think now the Cardinals even too are just having a ridiculous amount of bad tests. COVID positive players, personnel, coaches, everything. I mean, it's really tough for the MLB to pull this off in a safe manner, because you can't do what the NBA is doing with the bubble. The NBA got lucky because their specific game you can do in a warehouse, and you can do it if you got a few warehouses, you can put them together. The Wide World of Sports and Disney World, that's where they created the bubble. They have the space to do that, but you can't put 5 or 6 baseball diamonds, right? You can't put 5 or 6 stadiums together and make a giant bubble out of that. There's too many teams. There's too many players in the MLB.
Well, you could in like Wyoming or Montana.
That is true.
Invested the money, you could build it.
We could do like Coop, I'm sure, probably wanted a Field of Dreams built in a cornfield, just like 7 baseball.
There.
Yeah.
It's there. The 3 of us are making a pilgrimage our senior year.
I'll be down for that. I'd be down. Oh, yeah. I wouldn't cry. I know you would, but
I'd cry. I'd scoop some dirt from the ground, put it in a little jar, keep it.
Well, jar of dirt.
A jar of dirt.
Jar of dirt. Yeah. But I mean, it's Commissioner Rob Manfred, right? He's he said some conflicting things about what's been going on. He said, on the one hand, there is no reason to stop right now, even though all these players and coaches are testing positive. They still have no reason to stop. But a few days later, he also said that, well, if the continuations of infections happen, then we could have a reason to stop. I mean, you kind of already have a reason to stop if 3 of your teams are basically, dead in the water right now, not being able to play, and you have to keep rescheduling teams to other teams to play them, which is also risking for, cross-contamination, whatever. I mean, guys, could this league handle another stop? Is that a reality?
Well, also, reports are that Rob Manfred told any networks that are going to televise MLB games this upcoming week to plan to have a backup programming available if games are stopped, postponed, or the league ends everything at the snap of a finger. So I don't think this is going to last past Wednesday or Thursday, and I think by that time, Rob Manfred and his team will come together and just say, we need to scrap all of this because it's just not going to happen this year.
If that does happen, that's probably going to be the report, scrap everything. If there's a way to get out of this, if there's a light at the end of the tunnel and they can make it through August, I think if you see a potential stop in the season, they'll just go straight to the postseason. I think if you can make it through this month, if August comes and then September hits and you have to stop because of COVID, they'll stop and they'll just go directly to a postseason, even if that means it's only a 30-game schedule.
Mm-hmm.
But, this week will become a very important week for the future of Major League Baseball in 2020.
Yeah, I firmly agree with that. And, I mean, you got to think about how much money they were losing before and now how much money they're going to be losing from TV deals being shut down.
Yep.
Right? I mean, because you got all your fans gone, for one thing. So there's a giant chunk of your revenue gone. But then you were relying on TV deals, and now you can't even make the TV deals happen. Now you've got all of your revenue gone.
Yep.
And it's basically just merchandise. And even then, you've got consumers that don't need to be spending money on baseball merchandise. They need to be spending money on food and,
Yep.
paying their bills and things like that in a pandemic where work is hard to come by. So it's like, geez, baseball, this is getting scary because, I mean, it might make more sense to shut down the season and just try and save as much money and then come out strong next year. I mean, is it costing more money just to keep the league running? It just,
yeah.
I don't know. That it's a business decision that he's got to make at some point. I know we tried our best. We had a season. We had a part of a season. We didn't just call it quits. But I mean, geez, do we need to cut our losses and just head into 2021? To me, that's what makes the most sense. We're on the cusp, guys. I mean, we're right there. I think that it's a possibility that this league shuts down in a couple of weeks if things start going the way they're going. On the other hand, there is a different league that is the hope and savior and bright light of the sports world right now.
Yep.
And it is highly entertaining to watch. That is the NBA. I know we talk about these two leagues, the MLB and the NBA, basically on a weekly basis, but that's purely because they're kind of like the yin and yang of sports right now. One league's doing it right because they can. The other league's doing it wrong because they kind of suck at it. So
and I have to be honest, it's not the leagues I would have guessed.
Yeah.
I would have guessed the NBA would have been doing it all wrong, and the MLB would have gotten it right.
Yeah.
But that just shows you who knows what will happen in 2020.
Yep.
But here we are. So the NBA, they resumed play on July 30th, just a few days ago. It was a glorious opening, I must say. Let's talk about a few of these key games that just happened. The Celtics and the Bucks, right? That was a really, really interesting game to watch. Giannis picked up right where he left off. 36 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists. The Bucks won against the Celtics, 119-112. Jason Tatum, nowhere to be found, guys. I mean, he had a really, really
horrible game. I was really surprised by this. I thought he was going to come back where he picked up right off of that where the season ended. So, yeah, it was kind of disappointing to see that effort from him.
I did too. I didn't know who was going to really carry the baton for the Celtics, and it wasn't him. He only had 5 points. He was 2 of 18 on field goals. That's terrible. That's really bad. That's almost as bad as Buddy Hield going 2 for 12 against the Spurs on 3 points, even though he was the reigning 3-point champion in the NBA. Anyway, sorry, just had to talk about that.
Bad day.
Very bad day. Very frustrating game to watch.
Oh no. Let me.
Let's get into an even more frustrating game.
Let me top you with my Mavericks losing to the Rockets 152-149 in overtime, and the Mavericks were beating the Rockets by at least 20, I think 22 at one point, and we blew it. Luka got a triple-double. Kristaps scored 39. But no, James Harden drops a 40-plus piece on us, and Russell does the same. So
I just have to say, why don't your basketball teams get good? The Magic one, it's got to be easy, right? Come on.
You're still fighting for the 8th seed, so come talk to me when you're in the playoffs.
Hey, that's 1-0 in the bubble.
If we beat the Suns tonight, we have secured a playoff spot.
All right.
Boom.
All right. And if we win a couple more games, we've secured our playoff spot.
I don't want to hear it, man.
I know you don't want to hear it.
I don't want to hear it. You got all these teams in the friggin' East that got cut off, and then there's Orlando at the end, and they just got to fight for a few teams to get that 8th spot. Yeah. And then you got the Kings, and we're competing against the friggin' Pelicans and the Spurs and the Trailblazers and everybody else, because there were like 6 teams that were outside of the top 8 that got invited from the West. I don't even want to hear it. All right, we got it tough, but at the same time,
Kings are close though. The Kings are close.
We are close. Everybody keeps losing. We're all within a few games of each other. It's still possible. It could happen.
It could happen.
It could happen. Now, the other game that was pretty interesting that went on, the Lakers, they dropped the matchup to the Raptors.
Yeah.
107-92. But I guess, and I didn't know this, as history has shown, since 2014, the Raptors have won 11 straight against the Lakers.
Wow.
I did not know that.
And it's surprising because the Lakers coming off of a great win against the Clippers. So, I mean, that's a 1-2 battle right there. So coming off of a great win right there, you would have expected it to follow some more. But that just goes to show you that Toronto, it wasn't just Kawhi. I think we were all wrong on that. It has shown that Nick Nurse has steered that boat in the right direction, and I think Toronto can maybe go back to the finals now. With a showing like this in the bubble, I think they're showing that they can compete and maybe dethrone the Bucks this year.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not convinced yet. I need to see a couple more games. I'm not convinced. I think the Bucks will just easily walk through everything here in the East.
Yeah.
Until it comes time to the NBA Finals. I would love to see the Raptors make it back-to-back, but I still need a little bit more convincing.
I think I just want to see Drake in the finals again.
Yes.
I think that's just personally what I want to see.
Well,
I want to see Drake. I want to see Drake talk to LeBron during the finals.
Drake is going to find a way to get into the bubble. Like, he'll quarantine himself for 2 weeks and then, sneak in like a suitcase or something and then pop out, and there he is.
Yep.
That's what I was going to say. Regardless, doesn't matter who the team is, doesn't matter what's going on. He's going to be at the finals. He's going to be supporting whatever team he feels best when he's there. I mean, and that's not like if he's there, he's going to be there. It's Drake. It's Drake. He's everywhere.
Yes.
To me, that it only proved one that the Lakers were less impressive than we thought that they were. That was terrible English. It just proved to me that the Lakers were weaker than we thought they were, not that the Raptors are stronger than we thought they were. I still think the Bucks are way stronger than them, and I think that they're still going to get there. I just think that we don't think that the Lakers walk on water anymore, basically. Now we got just a few games coming up here this week that are going to be very interesting to watch. Yep. We only got a few more minutes going, so I want to make sure that we get through these guys. But one of the things, just real quick to hit, the games were ridiculously high scoring.
Yeah.
Only 2 teams did not score over 100 points, and that was the Jazz and then the Lakers in their loss to the Raptors. I mean, in the game, the Mavs Rockets game, 152 to 149 in overtime. That's ridiculous. That's one of the highest scoring NBA games ever. I think that ranks in the top 10. So that's
it does.
Geez, I mean, that's that. What is that? Is that a lack of motivation to play defense? Is just that people just they feel like they're playing a pickup game and they just want to go crazy and score? Is it over motivation? Is it over rest?
I think the guys are just. I think they're just comfortable in this bubble, and I think they're just like it's just a shoot around in a sense. I mean, we see the videos over the summer when these guys all play together in their big pickup games, and I think that's kind of what they're treating it like. It's just a big pickup game with a little bit more organization to it, and I think they're having fun, and I think it's a little less pressure because there's no fans yelling at you. There's no one screaming at you. There's no one throwing something at you, So I think it's a bit it's just a bit more relaxed style of play right now.
For sure. And, I hope that they continue that because it just makes it way more interesting for the viewers, especially with no fans. All right, quick lightning round, and then we got to get out of here, guys. Bucks and Rockets tonight. Later tonight. Who do we got?
Bucks. Got the Bucks.
Bucks? I got the Bucks too. Jazz and Lakers.
Lakers.
Jazz.
Lakers. Yeah, gonna take the Lakers
Jazz.
on this
one. I think they're a little sad.
Yeah. Clippers and Mavs.
Mavs. They bounce back.
I'm gonna take the Mavs. I'm gonna take
the Clippers.
Yeah. All right, there we go. There we go, guys. All right. Real quick, before we go, we have a special guest coming up next week. We're going to be interviewing somebody very knowledgeable in the world of Florida sports. So be sure to tune in to the Student Section Summer League podcast next week. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest